Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And y'all, I am standing inside of my root cellar. You guys have been asking me for a root cellar video. Today is the day you're gonna see some root cellar content. So if you're brand new to me, my name is Barbara. I live in Tennessee in zone 7B. I am literally sitting inside of our root cellar and we are out here. I really should say my husband is out here doing an overhaul to help us get this place in order. So to kind of bring you back and to bring you current, we had this root cellar built. It has been probably, what, 2 years ago now? You think?
Yeah. 2
years ago? Yeah. So it's probably been 2 years ago since it's been completely finished. This, everybody always says this is a big root cellar. It's pretty big. It's a, do you remember the dimensions? Is it 20 by 20 or?
20, I think.
Okay, my husband thinks this is a 20 by, I thought it was like 20, maybe it's a 20 by 20, somewhere along in there. It might be 25 by 20, something like that. But anyway, it's a pretty big size for a root cellar. And so on this video, I want to kind of share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly, as well as give you a tour of the root cellar. So I will start with the root cellar. Again, we had someone build it. I have a root cellar playlist that only has like a couple of videos, but if you want to see the build of the root cellar, you can go and check that playlist out. I show you footage of it being built and all of that. And the root cellar has been a blessing, but also we have had some challenges with the root cellar. So we are in the South, and so we're in the state of Tennessee. And so most people will tell you that having a root cellar in the South is not really practical just because the summers get really, really hot. And I will say it may not be ideal as it is in the North, but it does serve a purpose. So I'm going to kind of walk you through our journey and what we've learned so far after having the root cellar for about 2 to 3 years. So when they first built the root cellar, they dug, I think, 9 or 10 feet into the ground. Is that right, babe?
Yeah.
9 or 10 feet into the ground. Because, and the purpose of a root cellar, again, is to store goods. It's almost like a cold room, or not another term for a basement, but people used to use root cellars back in the day to store food, and it was kind of underground. And the reason is because the earth keeps a temperature of about 55 degrees. So in the summertime, if you have it deep enough, especially like in the North, then you can keep your perishable items, your canned goods, your produce, things like your potatoes, your onions, your garlic, things like that. You can still keep them relatively long as a storage option in a root cellar. And that's the reason why we built the root cellar, is to have a storage option for preserving food as well as things that we would get from the garden. So when they dug it 9 or 10 feet into the ground, that is kind of how far deep it is. We do have now what do you call it? A thing that keeps the temperature and the humidity out here. So right now the temperature, what is the temperature? It's 54 degrees in here, and the humidity is 62%. The humidity right now is 63%. You want your humidity to be relatively, I want to say between 70 to 80%. Somewhere along there is a safe range. Now 62% is fine, but in the summertime, you want to make sure that your humidity doesn't get too high. So right now it's 54 degrees in here. It's in the middle of February. Outside the temperature is about 40 degrees outside. So it's about 10 degrees warmer in here. And what we have found is that in the winter time, it keeps the temperature great, fantastic, no issues. In the summertime, the highest I have seen it get in here is about 70 to 75. That's about right.
Yeah.
So even though it may be 90 to 100 outside, it has not gone above 75 in here. So even though it doesn't stay the temperature of earth, which is around 55 degrees, that is still pretty good, in my opinion, for a root cellar in the South. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with root cellars, and I have not seen much content about root cellars. So I'm just gonna really take you through our own personal experience. Now let me transition and talk about some of the challenges that we've had with the root cellar. And one of the reasons why I haven't shown it a lot on video is because, y'all, it's a mess. No, I'm not gonna say it's a mess in here, but there was a section that was a mess, and that's what we're out here cleaning out today. So about 2 summers ago, I came out here to get something, and I saw mold on a lot of my canning jars. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? That was the second summer I think that we had it. The first summer was fine. Long story short, I think it had rained a ton, and the humidity level in here was very, very high. This is before we started keeping a check on the humidity, because remember, our first fruit cellar, we were newbies. So we have learned and still learning as we go the first couple of years. But it had rained a ton and the humidity level was off the charts in here. And so the high humidity plus the high heat outside had created some mold on my canning jars. So literally a whole shelf of canning jars were no longer good and safe to eat. And to be quite honest with you, y'all, we are just now dealing with it. They've been sitting out here on the shelf. But from that point forward, we had to kind of figure out what was going on and why were we having the issues with humidity. So let me pause here and then I'll get my husband to kind of talk a little bit about what we, some changes that we made and some things that we learned to get the humidity more to a place that is acceptable, and what we do now to make sure that the humidity stays where it is. And then I'll come back and I'll kind of show you with what we're doing in the overhaul.
So here's the thing, you know, when we first started this journey, we weren't keeping an eye on the humidity. You know, we just kind of had it dug out, built, and the temperature was good when we first started putting stuff in here. And then we came in here and checked it one day, and there were things that were growing, roots and jars that had mold on them, and we couldn't figure it out, and we realized the humidity was too high. So what we've done since then to try to alleviate some of the problems we've been having is we put a dehumidifier. We've had one installed in here that, and we have power in here that you can see the lights going on. So we keep a dehumidifier going that just keeps draining water out of here. Because it's under the ground, when it rains a lot and it's wet down in there, water will come through the cinder blocks. Yes, we had a liner put on it, and we had some other stuff done to it, but water still seems to get through the liner and get on the cinder blocks. And when it does, it gets moist in here.
Yeah, but not water. There's not water on the ground. So just make that you can just see that there's water spots
you
on the
can see
cinder
behind
block.
me. There's some moist spots on the cinder block.
But we don't see water when we come in.
It's not standing water in here. It's just the walls have some moisture in it. And so that when you see that, it lets you know that the humidity will be high, because humidity is a measure of the water in the air. So we put a dehumidifier in here that constantly is taking the water out. And so we have a water hose hooked to it so that it never cuts off. At one point, we were just letting the bucket fill up, and then we would dump it and come back and check it. And that really wasn't working out as well. So we hooked the water hose to it, ran it through the wall and ran it outside. Now it just is on all the time. And so it keeps the water level to a minimum. So it hasn't been running like it should, is why you see moisture on the walls, but it is getting better. So it was at 77 a few days ago, and now it's down to 66, and it's dropping because it's running like it should. And so we're now paying a little more attention. So we put the dehumidifier in, and so now that keeps the moisture down. During the summer, even though 75 degrees is doable, we would like to see it be a little more cooler in the summer, but we're going to have to make some further adjustments to try to achieve that. But the key thing is keeping an eye. If you come out here and it's too warm, then you can do some things to try to alleviate. Open the door, let some of the heat bleed off, and it'll cool off and things like that. Maybe put a mobile air conditioner in here a little bit to kind of keep the temperature down. But if you don't come in here and you just put food in here and you keep putting food in here, and then you don't come in here for weeks at a time, you could come in and find, at least in our zone, because of the heat and the humidity in the summer, you could find things may go awry. So it is a challenge, but with some of the things we're putting in place will help us stay on top of what's going on out here. And as we cycle food through, it's on the shelf and then it's being eaten, nothing should stay out here for an extremely long period of time. And so I think that we're going to do better as we start to make these adjustments.
Okay, thanks, honey. Okay, so y'all, one of the things that he talked about is that when the root cellar was being built, we did have a liner put all around. I don't know what the proper name of it is, but it looks like almost like black plastic, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a pool liner that's thick like that.
A pool liner, he says, like thick like that. So that does definitely help with the rain and all that good stuff. So in terms of kind of what we're doing, and I'm going to come back and tell you some more about the root cellar and what stuff we keep out here and what I feel comfortable keeping out here and how we keep a check on it. So in terms of how we keep a check, I actually have a reminder on my phone every week that says check root cellar. On Sundays at 12 noon, it goes off to check the root cellar. And so I'm not diligent about coming out here every single week on that Sunday, but I try to come out here at least once during that week to just make sure. And I'll just kind of look and pop in and see what the temperature is and the humidity. There have been times like in this past, like when we travel a lot, the past 2 to 3 weeks, we hadn't been out here. So what, the humidifier had just stopped, had turned off, baby?
Yeah, it turned off.
The humidifier had turned off, so the humidity was 77. Again, 77 in the wintertime is not a big deal. But again, the fact that we checked it and caught it, now we have the humidifier back running and it's already down to 62. So my point is that you do have to check your stuff. So let me take you over here and show you what we're doing. And y'all, I'm telling you, this is not the most prettiest site, but I'm just giving you the raw, real, honest truth. You said you wanted to see the root cellar, so you're gonna see the root cellar. Let me show you what we're doing right now. So these are jars. You can see the date. I canned this stuff in July 2022, so it's 2.5 years old. So obviously if things were good, it would have been gone by now anyway, but this is the stuff that was on the shelf. And I don't know if you can see because it's not picking up real good, but there is like some mold on the side of the lip of the jar, right? And so it's been, once we saw the mold, we kind of just left it sitting here. So basically what we're doing today is my husband is really just emptying out all of the jars. He has a wheelbarrow with a trash bag. He's emptying out all the jars and the contents so that we can finally throw them away, the contents, and then we will save the jars. So that's what we're doing. All the stuff that you see here on the ground is all stuff that I had canned that I lost. I'm not proud to say it, but that is the honest truth. And y'all, even just seeing it in totality, it gives me a sick feeling in my stomach, okay? A sick feeling. But y'all, that is the reality of what happened, and there's nothing I can do to change it. But I want to be authentic on the channel. I don't want you to think that everything that we build, everything that we do is perfect, and then me encouraging you to do something that you're like, well, was yours perfect? Now, if you're in the midst or have a desire to have a root cellar, I'm not going to discourage you to have a root cellar. Learn from our mistakes. And again, you may be in a different zone and your construction may be different. If we had to do all over again, would we have done a root cellar? My answer would be yes. My husband says yes too. But to see all of that food that I took the time to can and preserve and to have to throw it away, it does not make me feel good whatsoever. And now it's almost like bringing tears to my eyes because I'm like, man, that's a lot of food. But y'all, that's what happens when you try something new, when you haven't done it and it's your first time, you're bound to have some mistakes. And this is food, again, that I canned back in 2022. Now, here is the interesting thing, and let me go get this jar so I can show you. This is a jar of applesauce that we are getting rid of. This is part of the ones that I had canned. Now, there was mold. You can't see it because it's dark, but it's like, just like, it doesn't look right around the lid. My husband popped the lid. When you open the lid, this is what the inside of the lid looks like. You don't see any mold, and he had to pry it open. It was still sealed. And when you smell this, it smells just like applesauce. It has no bad smell. So I think the actual contents of this jar in particular, and probably a lot of these jars, the contents are probably good. And they could probably still be eaten, but they probably could have been eaten the day that I found it because I think the mold was on the outside of the lid. It did not get in the jar because the jar was sealed. But this is a journey for me. I am not going to eat it. I don't feel comfortable eating. My mind won't let me do it. It will not let me do it. Now, if I was in an emergency, in a crisis, would I eat it? Y'all, I might get a spoon and go to the very bottom of the jar. Make sure it ain't near the top. But today is not a crisis day. So I'm not going to eat it. Now, don't be putting no comments in here talking about, girl, you should eat that. You're throwing away a lot of food. You get your root cellar. You had this issue. You keep your food if you want to keep it. Do not be in my comments talking about I should have ate this food because your girl is not eating it, okay? Not gonna happen. But I just wanted to show you, and so this gives me faith. The jar was sealed, y'all. Canning does work, right? This has nothing to do with I didn't can it right. This has everything to do with the humidity that got in my root cellar. That's what this is all about. And I still think the contents were good, but to be on the safe side and to not go rogue, we're just dumping out all the contents of the jars. Now, the reason why we have not been out here is to be quite honest. One, booked and busy. Number two, it's just overwhelming to come out here and to do all these jars. But today is the day that we decided to get it done. And really my husband. Thank God for my husband. Because he is the one doing the dirty work, okay? He is the one, and I mean, dirty when I say, it's not dirty, but he the one emptying out all these jars while I'm on the phone, while I'm on the camera talking to y'all. He the one out there dumping these jars, not me. Now, I won't have to wash all these jars, and when that first happened, I'm like, just get rid of everything. Just get rid of everything, because I was just so frustrated. I was so disappointed. I'm like, get rid of the jars, get rid of the contents. He was like, you gonna throw all those jars away? I'm like, yes, I got plenty of jars. I got stacks of jars. Now, 2 years later, the world as we know it is a little crazy. Things are expensive. And so I'm not going to get rid of these jars because that would not be a good steward. But at first, I was like, get rid of all of it because I got plenty of jars. And I still got plenty of jars. But it don't make sense for me to get rid of all these jars. So it's going to be a process to clean all these jars. I mean, I'm just going to take them in stages and put them in the dishwasher and then find somewhere to store them. But that's kind of where we are. So let me take you back over here to Operation Central Deconstruct, and let's check in and see how far he's gotten. Y'all, check out my husband. What you say, honey?
So you see this jar of peaches? It got caught up into in the midst of the fray. You know, it's got some dust, and then the dust is not really scary, but it had some mold looking stuff on the jar. You really can't see it here. But here's the thing. So you see this jar, right? I've got to take this tool and I got to put something on it to pop it up. You don't know if you could hear that. But when I smell these peaches, smell it. It smells like the day you canned it. I really don't think anything is wrong. We're just, like she said, going through this process because it's a mental gymnastics we got to play about opening up a jar that looks bad and eating the food. But I really think the food is just fine. It smells just as fresh as when she canned it. That is the great thing about canning. It really does work.
Yeah, the jars are sealed, y'all. They are sealed, and he's having to pry them open. So let's get to it. So I jump over here to start helping my husband. So we kind of divide and conquer. He is emptying all the contents of the jar. We have a wheelbarrow with a big black trash bag in it. And so what I offered to do was to just pop open all of the jars. So that way he can just concentrate on emptying the contents and not having to pop the jars and empty the contents. So you can see I'm just taking the jars and popping the lids off. The ones that I'm doing right now are pickle relish. You can see just based on the top of the lids, you know that it's dark. So the pickle relish, again, this has been done, canned 2.5 years ago. And so it's not going to be eat worthy. But you can see that's candied jalapenos right there that I just popped. But basically on this shelf where I'm starting is pickle relish, jars of jelly, and some candied jalapenos. So I'm just kind of working through getting all of these jars popped to make it easier for him so he can just come grab the jars and then dump them all into a bag. If I had to guess, we probably have at least 100 jars that we're going to have to open and empty. So guys, let me give you a visual. When you come through the front door, you can kind of see how big the root cellar is. We got lights installed. That was not in the very beginning, but that has definitely helped a ton. We got that done last summer, installing the lights in here. Obviously, when we're not in here, we keep the lights off because you want it to be, you know, dark. But just to kind of, this is the area where my husband is working with all the jars on the ground. And then I'll start over here on the right. This is kind of where I keep all of my Mylar bags and buckets. This section right here is completely wonderful, great. We've had no issues with this stuff right here, except this one issue right here where you can see a mouse got in that bag right there. But that's because that bag was out here unprotected. So that was completely my fault. And this is why you don't just store things just in Mylar bags. When you are doing Mylar bags for long-term storage, that's not going to be in your house, and even to me in your house, because you never know, because mice are always looking for something in the cold. I put my Mylar bags in these 5-gallon buckets because that way they are protected. I have had absolutely no issues. You see, I got a lot of buckets. They're all labeled. This is where I keep all of my bulk items, and this alone has been a great blessing to have the root cellar. I mean, I have everything out here. Flowers, beans, nuts, everything that you see me buy in bulk from Azure Standard is out here in this section in these buckets. This right here is just a wire shelf. This is the shelf where I had a lot of my onions this year that worked perfectly. This is a great storage option for onions. We had no issues at all in the root cellar. And then this is another rack that I have here. You can see these are the onions that I left out here. This is a great piece. I hate to say furniture, but I got this from Garden Supply. It is great. The trays pull out, as you can see, and you can slide them back in. You can use it to store onions, potatoes, things. It works great and has the slits and stuff and the holes. These are just onions that were bad that I left out here. Again, you can see it's just, so all of these are not, these are like really just shells of onions that are growing sprouts. So we got to get rid of those. But it did my onions perfectly for, I would say, at least 6 to 7 months. So we have that piece of furniture there. And then when we walk on the other side, I have wire shelving out here. These are all, y'all see how many lids I got? Lids, ball lids. This is before I started using ForJars. I have more jars there. Lemon juice that has to go because that's bad, because I left it out here too long. But that has something to do with the root cellar. And then any like bulk items I was having out here as well. So you can see coconut milk, sandwich boxes, things like that. And then this is where all of the canned stuff was that we are presently getting rid of. Okay guys, you can see these are the jars we have left several days later. So it may not look like we put a dent in it, but we actually have all of these jars right here have been washed and cleaned. Oh, I got a few that didn't have lids on them that my husband brought out here prematurely. But this whole box is stacked with clean jars and lids. This whole box right here is stacked with clean jars and lids. So we have done at least half of them, and we have these left to go. Okay guys, so we have made progress, even though it may not seem like it. So since the last shooting of the video, what we've been doing is we've been coming out here, getting jars. We filled up the wheelbarrow with jars. So I would say maybe 20 to 30 at a time. And we've just been putting them in the dishwasher at night. We let them come in and we soak them first in the sink to try to loosen up some of that residue and all of that gunk that's in there. And then we've been putting them in the dishwasher on a high heat, sanitized, washing cycle to make sure they're clean and good. And then we take them out and we've been topping them with lids and bands. So that's what we've been doing. So that's what you see over there, all the jars that are clean. My husband brought some out here that didn't have tops and lids. And I'm just doing that just because they'll be here in the open root cellar. I would just feel more comfortable. Again, nothing's gonna get in there but dust, but still, I would just feel better if it's, with a lid and with a top. Now, before I use them to can, of course, they will go through a wash cycle again, just because being out here, who knows how long they'll be out here before I actually use them, because I have plenty of jars in my house. But I do think that we made the right call to not get rid of the jars. I don't know what I wasn't thinking, because I was just really frustrated when all of this went down a couple years ago. But we'll get the rest of these jars done, and that'll be a nice stack and supply. And then also I'm thinking, that means I had canned a lot of stuff, y'all. I had canned a ton of stuff, because I know I've done at least, if not 100 jars, pretty close. And I'm looking on the floor, that's probably a good 50 or 60. So all of those jars had something in them. So your girl was canning way back then, way back then. And so that makes me feel proud that I was actually doing the stuff. And again, you learn as you go. It's all part of the journey. Lessons learned, right? And so the other thing that we have to do is we'll get rid of these. They're like sprouting, trying to do something. But it's really nothing but a shell and this sprouting up. So we'll get all of these out of here and dispose of that, so that we'll get this cleaned up. So this will be ready for the new crops like onions and potatoes and things like that. And then I'm going to actually move this over towards the wall. And once I get the jars all clean, like my husband, he just brought them in here. You know how they do. Okay, so what I was saying, my husband just kind of came and put the jars in, but actually what I'm going to do from an organization standpoint is that I'll put all the jars, I don't know if you can see it, back there where those jars are. So I'll just have a shelf full of clean jars, lids and bands, and that's what that last shelf will be, ready to go. Plus I got tons of jars, tons in my garage, because I bought tons of them right before there was a shortage of jars. So I am blessed to have plenty of jars and lids. So that's where I put that. This will move closer to the wall, so that way kind of when you come in, you'll kind of see the stuff there. The next step in the root cellar is to just take an inventory of everything that's in my 5-gallon buckets. I had an inventory. My daughter usually does it when she comes home from college. She usually do it for me, but it hasn't been done, and probably it may be coming up close on a year. And so because I haven't been as diligent, and usually I'm coming out here or I'm sending my husband or my son to come get something, I haven't been as diligent to kind of mark off what they have taken, so I don't have an accurate count. So that's what I will do next, and maybe I'll show you a video when we actually go through the buckets and actually do the inventory. But that's what's next on the list as well, to do an inventory to make sure that I know what I have in the buckets. The buckets have worked out extremely, extremely well. If you haven't seen how I preserve for long-term storage, I do have a video on that. I'll pop it up here. Basically, I do the Mylar bags, and then I put the Mylar bags inside of a 5-gallon bucket with a gamma lid, and I close it up. That's basically how I do it. So that way I have no issues. And when you do it in that method, in the Mylar bag and then the Mylar bag inside of the 5-gallon bucket, your stuff will last 20 to 25 years easily. There is no, like, literally, y'all, I just, I had to do something, had to cook something for a funeral this past weekend. And one of the things I had to make was some curry lentils. And the lentils we got from the root cellar. And on the packaging date, not the packaging, like the day that I stored it was literally February 2020. 5 years ago, y'all. Because 5 years ago, I bought a 50-pound bag of lentils. Do you hear what I'm saying? Beans don't go bad. But because I had them in the Mylar bag and inside the 5-gallon bucket, they're like brand, like there's nothing wrong with them. But that's how you start to build food security, is buying in bulk and then having a long-term storage. That's how you do it, okay? That's a whole nother video. But basically, the things in the Mylar bags have worked out extremely, extremely well. The stuff that's in the cans, like I said, it was working good until we had that one little blip that summer, right? But before then, it was working just fine. And so, since we've had the little blip with the whole dehumidifier and things like that going on, I've been keeping a lot of my can jars in my house. And that's really more convenient for me because I can just go in and get it. The root cellar, again, is great, But when it's cold outside like it is tonight, and it's gonna be real cold, if I need something, then you know I'm asking my husband to come out here and get it, because I don't wanna walk out here and it's so cold, right? And then before we had lights, I had to come out here with a flashlight. But now we have lights in here. Like, it's dark now outside, but it's light in here. You can see it's very bright. My whole point is, if I had to do it all over again, I would still do the root cellar. This was just a blip in the screen. Now, will I start back putting my canned jars out here? I probably will at some point, but I've gotten so used to having them in my house, and I have a whole nother closet that I'm using that I can just put all my jars in. It's just easy grab and go. I've gotten spoiled. I've gotten spoiled a lot. Another thing that I wanted to mention about the root cellar is that we have a storm shelter door. So if there is bad weather, we haven't had to use it as of, since we've had it built. But if there's tornado weather, which we do get tornadoes in our area, we can come out here, and this will be kind of like a safe space because it has a storm shelter door. We're underground, and so it's a great, nice thing to also serve as a storm shelter. And I think for that, because our phone works out here, because we have light and all of that, then that is great. A great option. We didn't build it for a storm. We did not build it for a storm shelter, but it does serve the purpose of a storm shelter as well. And even though it's big, I think that comes in handy. If we ever gotta be in here, we ain't gonna be crowded. Everybody can have their own corner. Their own corner. But this is the video you guys have been saying that you wanted. So I hope that you got a chance to see a glimpse of the root cellar and kind of how it's laid out. You also got a chance to see kind of how we store stuff, what our plans are, and some of the losses and the challenges that we've had since we had it built. But over and over again, I say, if we had to do all over again, we would still have a root cellar. We probably would have done some things differently, but you live and you learn. If you have any questions about the setup, the build, all of that, let me know down below. And whatever I can't answer, I know my husband will, because he keeps up with all that, how it was constructed and all that. I just said I want a root cellar, and poof, things start happening. Things start happening. But anyway, I hope that you're doing well. Remember, y'all, this is all part of the journey. Even if you don't have a root cellar, you know it's important to have a way to store your preserved food. So that could be a basement, that could be a cold room, that could be a cellar, that could be up under your bed, that could be a closet. Everybody has different parameters that they have to work with. But at some point, you got to have a place to put your food. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Remember, gardening is a journey. This is part of it. Let's grow together. I'll see you next time, friend.